Hi, boys and girls. This is Ms. Kathy. I'm so happy you've joined me today for another story just for you. Down the Well by Elizabeth Montgomery. Princess, come back here! Come here! Princess ignored the command. A black border collie, the dog had been walking down an abandoned road with Cheryl Finley and Cheryl's stepsister Lavinia. All of a sudden, a streak of gray and white had leaped across the path in front of her. With a series of sharp staccato barks, she had leaped into the air and headed for the woods, following hard upon her prey. She well knew what that streak was. She had chased streaks like it many times before. On this cool, misty Sabbath afternoon, fall had already arrived in the Ouachita Mountains of Arkansas, near Magnet Cove. The hills were decorated with splotchy colors of red, purple, orange, henna, and yellow. But the colors this afternoon were not as bright as they might have been because the sky was overcast with clouds. Lavinia had been making an extended visit at Cheryl's home. On this particular day, the girls had gone out for an afternoon walk accompanied by the dog. Almost unconsciously, they had turned their steps toward a dense grove of trees that stretched from the south edge of town toward the hills. There they had found a deserted logging road and decided to walk along it. It was then that the streak had flashed in front of them, and Princess had disobeyed. She had always been an exceptionally obedient pet. In fact, she seldom ever refused to obey an out-and-out order. "Oh, dear!" exclaimed Cheryl as she saw her dog disappear behind some trees and bushes. "I hope she won't chase that rabbit very far." "Oh, I'm sure she won't," Lavinia said. "Anyway, she'll know how to come back." "I hope you're right." Cheryl furrowed her brow, trying not to worry. "But what should we do while we wait for her?" Standing some distance back from the road was an old weather-beaten house. The windows were out and the door was open. The girls decided to explore it. Inside, they poked around the rooms, all of which proved to be uninteresting. Then they decided to go out to the old shed to see what it looked like inside. They found no attraction there either, so Lavinia suggested they start back for home. "Not without Princess," Cheryl asserted. "I'm going down the road to see if I can call her in." Cheryl called and called. Finally the dog showed up, but something was wrong. She was limping. Cheryl ran to meet her, and Princess came up to her, dragging her left hind foot. It had been badly cut and was bleeding profusely. Cheryl quickly removed her scarf, tore it into strips, and applied a bandage to stop the blood. She gathered the dog into her arms and started running home, with Lavinia beside her. When she came to the old gray house, Cheryl decided to shorten the distance by cutting across the yard. As she did so, a patch of high weeds loomed up before her. She made a running jump to clear them and came down on some boards lying on the ground. The boards were rotten, and beneath them was a 50-foot well. Cheryl found herself falling down and down. Her head banged from one side of the rocky wall to the other. She blacked out, but came to when she struck the water. She was still holding Princess. She and the dog sank into the water, but before they touched the bottom, they rose to the surface again. It was dark down there, but feeling around, Cheryl found a ledge to grab onto. She clutched it with all her might. She drew her feet up and braced them against the opposite wall. With her hips pressed against one wall and her feet against the other, she wedged herself into a sitting position. Now the water came up to her waist. She drew Princess across her lap. All around her were old bottles, cans, pieces of boards, and other trash. Cheryl prayed, "Jesus, help me." In the meantime, Lavinia ran for help. Approaching the first house, she saw the owner, Mr. Costin, out near his pickup truck. "Help! Help!" she cried. "Cheryl is drowning! Back there!" She pointed to the old house. Mr. Costin thought of the well. He jumped into his truck and tore off for the place. Mrs. Costin and Lavinia spread the alarm, and a number of men joined the rescue party. Down in the well, Cheryl's legs began to grow numb. Again she prayed, "Jesus, help me!" Just then she looked up at the opening and saw a man's head bending over. Thinking she recognized her teacher, she asked, "Is that you, Mr. Costin?" "Yes, Cheryl," the man answered. "We will get you out. Close your eyes. We are going to let down a ladder." Already one or two other men had arrived. Mr. Costin needed their help lowering the ladder. This ladder was an extension ladder with a horizontal bar at the top. The men lowered it as far as the bar would let them. At this point, Princess began to bark. Cheryl's legs were growing more and more numb, and every jerk of the dog's body made it harder to hold her. Cheryl quieted the dog, and the men shouted to her to climb up the ladder. "What about my dog?" she said. "Please throw down a rope for her." One of the men had a rope in his pickup truck. He ran for it and dropped it down the well. Mr. Costin called, "Come up, Cheryl." "Not without my dog," she shouted back. Yet her legs were so numb, she knew she couldn't hold on much longer. "Jesus, help me," she prayed again, hoping that she could hold on long enough. The rope was her only chance to save Princess. With that, she must risk all. As the rope came down to her, she pressed herself extra hard against the two walls and released her handhold. With the rope, she quickly made a noose and fastened it around her dog's stomach and collar. Then she lunged toward the ladder and secured the rope to the bottom rung. "I'm ready," she called up. Mr. Costin told her to look straight ahead and start to climb. Leaving Princess paddling in the water, she started up. Because of her numbness, it was with great difficulty that she lifted her feet from one rung to another. "Look straight ahead," Mr. Costin repeated. She obeyed. Eager hands reached down to help her as she neared the top. When at last she was safely out, the men would have led her away at once, but she resisted them. "Not until I know Princess is safe," she said. They pulled up the ladder, and the dog came up with it, dangling from the rope at the bottom. Cheryl picked Princess up in her arms and got a grateful licking all over her face. Soon Princess's wound was taken care of, and she healed up well. To this day, Cheryl knows that God answered her prayers and performed a miracle. Several weeks before this incident, Mr. Costin had seen the ladder in a store, and a strong urge had come over him to buy it. At home, his wife had asked why in the world he wanted it. "I don't know," he had replied. "I may need it badly some day. It doesn't take up any room in the truck, so I'll just carry it around with me." Also, Cheryl found out that the well was 35 feet down to the water, and the water was 15 feet deep, well over her head. She is grateful for God's strength that helped her keep hoping for rescue and holding on until she and her dog were saved. Afterward, Princess presented her with a family of 11 puppies, which Cheryl also saw as a lovely miracle.
The story you have heard today is from Guide's Greatest Stories, written by various authors and compiled by Randy Fischel, and used with permission from the Pacific Press Publishing Association. If you're interested in any other books published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, please visit AdventistBookCenter.com or call 1-800-765-6955.
This podcast is a production of the Carolina Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.